I'm going through a book. The book is called Tell Me Your Life Story, and it's essentially a prompter for reminding an individual of the events of their lives. And so I'm taking pictures of each page, and then the LLM model that Paul and I have, mostly Paul, has put together for this project is waiting for me to download the transcript of Carolyn's first visit, and then download the images of these questions. And yeah, we're begun.
Nice.
Yep.
It's very exciting.
Yeah, super exciting. And then on the other side of things, that was like an initialization for this project. And this is something that you've talked about doing for now like a year or so. And we've now gotten to the practice of basically podcasting well, the truth of the matter is that it averages 3 hours a day that Audrey Lynn and I have recorded.
Okay.
And we are,
I didn't realize it was that much.
Well, you think about it, when we go to the mountains, that brings the average up. It's like 7-8 hours of podcasting.
Well,
right.
Yeah, because the mountains is that's a 4-hour touch just driving.
Yeah.
Just driving. That's amazing. That's exciting. I love it.
It is. And so that practice has now translated into you being able to practice it with Carol. And that first session was so profound for both of you, because you got to know things about Carolyn that you didn't know before. And Carolyn got to, it was almost cathartic for her in sharing her life experiences, and the wisdom that she's gleaned from those experiences really opened up a lot for her. And she's excited to do it again tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, neat. So are you guys doing in person or?
No, this is all online. This is
Still
all
online. Yeah.
Well, she's still in Edmonton, and I suspect that she will not leave Edmonton. I don't think she realizes it yet, but I don't see her moving out of Edmonton.
She has a purpose. She has a purpose there. Like her, and she might not, like you say, Audrey Lynn, might not even realize it, but that she was supposed to, her life's destiny was to teach Africans, be a teacher to Africans. She spent most of her teaching career in Africa. She comes back to Canada. Who's she teaching?
African.
Yep.
Like,
So,
well, John Andy is African.
What's that?
John Andy is African.
Yeah, but Carolyn's is her specialty is those with a great tan.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Not just born on the continent, but with a great tan.
Yes. Okay.
Yep.
And I wouldn't be surprised at all if she doesn't even recognize that pattern. But it's okay, because
And she might, especially going through it again. Like now, the next episode, she's going to talk. She said, "Oh, I could talk for an hour just about the university in Nigeria." Well, guess what episode 2's all about now?
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's an exciting thing, because now, again, this practice is with the intent of being able to go to, seniors complex and make condos. Maybe it's a day, like a home for seniors, or hospice, and capturing that wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And I remember thinking about 2 months ago, when things were really starting to ramp up, and Audrey Lynn and I were crafting, how would we approach these homes? How would we approach these people? And, being in your network, Audrey, one of the first people I thought of was Wendell. What stories could we pull out of that man, and what lessons ought to be shared within his community, regardless of what they think of him. The stories have the gold.
Well, they wanted to get a person in there to talk about and document his life, but that fell through.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, one of you guys approaching him and just saying, hey, we want to, talk about your life story, not saying that you're my friend.
Right.
There has to be some kind of connection, because just to come out of the blue, he wouldn't remember us. He's only met us a couple of times.
Oh, I'm sure he'd remember you.
Okay.
He's a smart man. Everybody thinks he's lost his mind, but that's what he's still got.
That's good. Yeah.
Stories.
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, and you could just say, hey, I'm just documenting seniors' lives, and
you've been in this community for so long, it only makes sense that we share your story.
Yeah. Can we ask you questions and how it, get some of these stories? That would be fine, I'm pretty sure.
Well, definitely something to investigate.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I'd love to do it, but, because if I have a script and a book, I could, but.
Well, the book is essentially just a primer for my curiosity.
Right.
That's all it is.
Yeah, draw ideas
and
of
something
questions.
to help me stay on track, because it's so easy to get down rabbit holes.
Yeah, that is true. Huh. When there's so many senior homes and all of that.
Oh, Audrey, I think your phone must have went into. Sounds like you got dropped into a pocket, and we can't hear you very well. It's pretty muffled. Can hear you loud and clear, but it sounded like we got dropped into a pocket or something. All right, let's quickly take a look at the Metal Mondays, starting with Amazon, because we talk about metal like it's a precious metal, but there's other types of metal right now that we are paying attention to, and that is the metal for servers. The data centers are ramping things up, and in fact, we've been watching these big tech companies, the price action, for a couple months now, and Amazon bouncing off of this major support area skyrocketed and has, what is this jump now? This is a 29% increase in the last month. So it looks like the new highs are being created. Markets are looking great. Google also pulling itself together from a big retracement, where from its previous all-time high dropped 22%, and that was in a short period of time as well. Only 56 days. But then, within the last 32, already taking off. And creeping up against, that is an all-time high again. See, 350.10. This is 350.16, so just edged above that all-time high. If this continues here in the next day or two, I expect that this area will end up becoming some support for a retracement. We'll just bring up that line there so we follow things. Right now, major support is classed here. So we can now we're just basically moving these pivot points up with us so that we can see where the price may gravitate towards. But this is weird. It's not, there we go. And so now we've got that. Next, Oracle not reaching up to new highs. It did have a nice increase over the last little while, 33% rise, but it has gone down over the last year or so by 57%. And so it's got a long ways to go before it's back at those highs. But this very well could be the next little spurt of life that we're seeing within the Great Reset, simply because we're here. Palantir bouncing off those lows from back in June of 2025, not creating a new high though, so inconclusive. Nvidia screaming up past its all-time high, didn't even look like much resistance. There was resistance for about 4 hours on Friday, but then first thing this morning jumps up and is screaming towards all-time past all-time highs already. Japanese index. This is the market index for top 225 companies. Already creating new highs. A little bit of a retracement here since Monday morning, yesterday morning when they opened up. I should say today, first thing in the morning. Markets opened there, and we will await. No, when did markets open there? That markets open there at like 3:30 in the afternoon, our time. So that would have been, yeah, there we go. So first thing in the morning, we were butting up against all-time highs, having a difficult time getting up above it. First thing this morning, jumped up and is now looking at creating some support from those all-time highs. There we go. Audrey, I'm not sure what happened there. I've got you twice now. The other one, I'm going to go ahead and just kick it from the studio. With the Asian markets rising like that, we're actually seeing a stagnation at the same time of the Japanese yen. However, we can see that we've also broken out of this trend. This trend that started at the beginning of March. As those highs went down, that would have been expected if the trend were to continue, that we would stay underneath that trend line. However, it bumped back up again and is looking like it's going to use the top side of that trend line as support. If that's the case, bad news for the Japanese currency, because it'll be reaching up to those all-time highs here in just less than, what is this? How many cents? 2 cents? Yep. 2.5. U.S. oil, this is the World Trade Index on oil. Also, major contributor to the strength of the U.S. economy. Since the last drop, oil is up again 20%, but I made a marking here so we can see. The way that I've done this is that I've made the beige blocks the trades that are going long, and then I made the blue blocks the trades that were anticipating going down. Don't really know why it's those colors, but that's just how it turned out. If we take a look at how this played out, first off, right before the war, Baron Trump made a bunch of purchases, bought oil, and then the price went up 71%, at which point he sold. Part of that major we call that a retracement, and since that time, since that high of March 8th, we've been seeing the news of the war be positive and negative, positive and negative, positive and negative. And we have to remember that it was right after Trump became the Führer again at the beginning of his latest term, how he was talking about tariffs and threatening tariffs on and off, and that was making the markets wiggle all over the place. He made a comment about that right on mainstream media saying, "Isn't it funny how the stock market works? I can just open up my mouth and they move." Well, he was doing the same thing with this oil situation. The Strait of Hormuz is opening. Tomorrow I'm going to make them. And then 2 days later, realizing that the deadline was overdue, he had to make an adjustment to what he thought was his plan. And then, of course, the price comes down. But isn't it how is funny is it that it would coincide with major volumes of trade at the same time? So when we take a look at what's occurred, we see that the price went up, and it even tempted to go to its all-time high. But, that first swing was 70%. Well, then what happens? That 70% gets reinvested at 30% off. So now instead of holding, let's say, for instance, $1 million, let's run through this so that people can see the power of this type of trading strategy. So here's 1,000. Sorry, we'll go 1 million. $1 million, you're starting out with it. Well, that first great increase brings you up to 1.7 because it's about 70%. So now you're up 1.7. I'm going to grab my calculator because I can already tell math is not an exact science, and sometimes I got to use a computer to help me. So now you got 1.7 million, but then you're dropping the price and you're increasing the size of your holdings by 30%. What does that mean? Well, now instead of holding $1 million worth from the beginning, now you're holding 1.7 times 0.3. Now you are holding this of the same. You're holding $2.5 million worth now. So already, because of the price fluctuation going up and then coming down, you've more than doubled your money. Because you bought this much, you now hold that much compared to holding $1 million worth before. So now that 2.5 million is going to go up in value, right? Well, I should say that 1.7 gets reinvested. So it's 1.7 and then it comes in at 1.7 here. That's correct. So now he's got 1.7 million. Goes up and they would have taken out up here 45%. So now that 1.7 million times 0.45 is basically 2.5, but 2.47 to be exact. So that's how much now it is, but they sell it and then they buy again. So right now they're sitting on that 2.47% is another 20% bigger. So already 2.9. They've tripled their money. Okay? War is the best thing, especially when it has to do with energy. So they took $1 million. They took way more than $1 million. One of the trades was $5 billion. So they took their money and they've tripled it. Essentially tripled it since. Just taking the movements. And then all you got to do is put out another update for the reality TV show of the imaginary metaverse. And then the price goes the other way because everybody freaks out. And it must be true because I saw Trump say it. So why are we talking about oil so much? Well, first off, it is market analysis. So we could really just go anywhere. But we have to take into consideration the need for energy. Did you know that the data centers that are being built Now, for them to be approved, old ones are exempt from this, but now, in order to have a data center approved for construction, you have to have it in your business plan that you are producing your own energy. Well, guess what they're doing to do that? Guess what they're doing to be the generators of their own energy for their data centers, because now you can't build a data center unless you're going to provide and produce your own energy for the data center. You're not allowed to draw from the grid anymore. You have to add to the grid. But guess how they're doing it? Diesel generators. What does that require? These guys are the metalheads, right? I like to call it Metal Mondays because I go into my zone. I go into headphone land when I'm working and I listen to heavy metal. And it's just because it's Mondays. It's a good energy to be in, especially on a Monday. Sometimes you feel like the weekend was kind of nice, so you don't have as much get up and go on Mondays, but you listen to heavy metal and that kind of gets you going. Well, these guys are the metalheads, okay? They're building the infrastructure for the Tower of Babel. I mean, AI. I know I always mess up on the terminologies of things. All of these tech companies, they are the metalheads. They're the ones creating the infrastructure for the tower. Oil is still going to be the fuel. You know, out of all of the advancements that they've made with energy, they are not going to just make it widely available for people to subscribe to cheap energy. That's not going to happen. They're going to make sure that people are extremely impoverished so that the cries for help are heard loud and clear. Of course, typically speaking, whenever people were being oppressed economically by their overlords, it would be God that would listen to their cries. But now it's going to be the government because people have replaced God with government. And not that that's bad. It's just that's the path that they're choosing. And you know, having a different path makes it very helpful for us because we can position ourselves. Dow Jones Industrial Average Index. This is going to be an interesting month, I believe. Why? From the very, very peak of the engagement, the algorithmic engagements on the Epstein files, where it had to be mentioned that the Dow Jones was at 50,000 and that we all need to shut up and be quiet and not persist so much with finding out who was in the Epstein files. I know we released them and they're redacted, but come on, stop complaining because the Dow Jones is at 50,000. Since that point, markets actually took an 11% drop across 47 days. 11% drop. And since that time, they've come back up 9%. But where have they come back up? Oh, look. This old pivot point. Little bit of an eke out over the top. Retracement coming back down to test old support from back. Whoa, look at the triple top. It came back to test the triple top. The history does not always repeat itself. So I'm not going to say what's going to happen next, but I am, however, just going to go back and look. Before COVID, after that triple top, we had an accumulation and then a drop. This accumulation did not drop. So where's the rhyme? if this zone provides the resistance, there will be a crash. There will be this is a very precarious point. And there's so much back and forth in the narrative, nobody knows what's going to happen. And so as a result, you've got most of Wall Street is optimistic. And they're calling up all their clients saying, yeah, no, you want to buy. Trust me, you want to buy. And so people are going long, but it's not based off of a technical analysis, that's for sure. If it can provide support, I'm of the mind that we might not actually have a crash here. We might have a long run, another bullish run. That what we saw as a decline there during the, whatever they want to call a war in Iran, could very well turn around and become the catalyst for the next level of growth. We might be waiting for that crash. One of the things that Audrey Lynn shared there, I still haven't gone and checked it out, but it's very indicative of what we learned about in The Big Short. How it is that we are about 2 years away from the mortgages that are renewing from when they were taken in during COVID. People can't afford their homes. People can't afford their homes because interest rates have gone up considerably since that time. The little increases of interest that Trump told Jerome Powell not to do, and Jerome Powell just kept on bumping up the interest rates, and then Trump said, I'm going to have to fire this guy, as if he was in charge. And yeah, so where was it going with that? God, I don't know where I was going with that, but that. Oh,
you were saying something about Audrey Lynn.
Big Short. You were going.
Audrey Lynn. Yeah, Audrey Lynn brought up a good point that these mortgages that are on the brink, they are going to be renewing in a couple of years, and the people that took those, their income has gone down. And so as a result, when those mortgages renew, they are not going to get approved, meaning that they're not going to be able to afford their places and they will be taken from them. Just another big housing bubble, but this time it's exemplified by the everything else bubble at the same time. And the fact that I did not know that that's when those were going to be coming through. I was expecting that this war was going to create the long-term problems for the economy to make things difficult so people cry out for a solution. But we might not see that. Audrey Lynn.
The other thing to consider is that the government of Canada has been taking loans from unsecured lenders, essentially not banks, and recycling the risk, very similar to what is in The Big Short. To
Right.
look at that movie or look at this thing that I posted yesterday in context to that movie was to me, oh my God, they're doing The Big Short. Holy shit, we not even 2 years, because 2027 is when these mortgages come due. That's what, 10 months from now? Not even 10 months from now. So in less than a year, this is all going to start to unravel, and I predict that it will take the Canadian government down. I wouldn't be surprised. Let's put it.
People think that, because Carney is a liberal and Trump is a Republican, that they are at odds, but Trump has never had anything bad to say about Carney. Yesterday during the Authentic Media Association's meeting, there was a comment talking about how, yeah, no, like that you'd think that they would be fighting, that they would be at odds with each other. And there is talk about, there being tensions, but the two leaders themselves, they're buddy buddy. And I said, well, of course they're going to be buddy buddy. Trump wants to buy Canada, and Carney's doing a great job of making it worthless. It's going to be nice and cheap for Trump to buy when the time comes.
If not Trump, then China.
And I kind of feel like that might be you remember how much in the first term that Trump had, how much he spoke up against China, how bad they were, and then he saved the day. I think that was a predictive programming for getting people to hate China, because that worked. A lot of people hate China, and it's like, you know what? China's not that bad. Why? Because they don't have a Rothschild's bank. That's why.
So China, Russia, and Iran,
and Syria.
And Syria, they're the only ones without a Rothschild bank?
Why do you think they've always been demonized by the American media? They've always been the enemy for decades. It's because they're the last ones holding out.
Makes sense.
Even that new prime minister or president or whatever there in Argentina. Everybody thinks he's just the greatest because of how much he minimized the government. And it's like, what difference does it make? They're still using the same Rothschilds-based bank. He's serving that bank. He's not serving the people. He's being a more attractive leader to the people, but he's serving the bank.
Attractive to the people for now.
For now. Oh, yeah. It's kind of like Trump, right? He was attractive to the people in the first term because he was all about bringing the troops home, and we're not going to waste money on endless wars in the Middle East anymore, so on and so forth. He even wrote, I think it was like 2017 or 18, he talked about how being in the Middle East was the worst decision America has ever made.
Agreed. And
which means, by his own word, going to Iran and causing problems over there was the worst decision he could have made. But we know who he serves. Silver. Let's go into the precious metals now. Still consolidating. We're not seeing a whole lot of action. In fact, that narrowing of the price action is still continuing. To be expected. Again, technical analysis shows that this time and time again, this will come down to a point and then it'll break out, and then we'll figure out where we're going next. Likely up. However, if oil does go to sky high and America ends up, America's got Venezuela, so that's a huge reserve of oil down there too. So now they could very well go ahead and become a strong dollar again, simply because Venezuela's got more oil than the Middle East. So if they wanted to, and if they can convince people that the generation of energy has to occur with oil, yeah, it will continue. The petrodollar just may survive the next little while. Gold prices actually coming back, retracing back from the push that we had from that low that was 23rd of March. Went up 17%, but pulling back now about 3 to 4%. Be interesting to see whether or not it holds this. If it doesn't hold this position here, this one's a pretty crucial position. If it doesn't hold that, we will likely see another test of a lower low. Market structure is pretty strong though. Like market structure is all the way up here at 45. Does this work? Yeah, it's working today. Yesterday this wasn't working. So that high right there is market structure as C. This being D, right? So if we end up to retesting this, then then it'll be a reversal. But that's a long ways to go. This is a crucial zone. If it can't maintain this, it'll likely fall back down, retesting, possibly even coming to test out this long-term trend line that's been in play. Well, let's zoom out. That long-term trend line has been in play since October 2023.
How far down would that bring us?
Well, that's the thing, right? It's hard to tell. If it were to do that right away, market structure says 3,800. I don't think that would happen, today, tomorrow. That if it were to do something, it would likely do something like this, right? So it would take some time, which would bring us around that $4,100 mark. If it's a little bit sooner, maybe under the 4,000 mark. Gold silver ratio still bouncing around, consolidating ever since we had that big drop there when gold and silver got their big pump at the end of January, consolidating ever since. Bitcoin dominance actually pushing up above that resistance that we've been following for a while, but it's holding out. It's not doing much more than that at the moment. Really just testing this pivot point from back in November. Bitcoin prices, though, still climbing upwards. The fact that we're up above this zone here is encouraging. But right now, we're waiting to see whether or not we actually make a proper test of this long-term trend line. I'm going to get rid of these because we don't really need them anymore. But that long-term trend line all the way from that all-time high that we saw, that in October. Ever since then, that long-term trend line has provided some good resistance. Well, now we need to see it provide some good support. So I would expect a retest of this trend line, and that if it were to retest, it could do it quite quickly. That's the thing about Bitcoin. Like, look at how quick it can move. Here's a quick 6% in a matter of a day, right? The stock market would get shut down if it goes 7% in a day. So if it were to go down and retest something, I would expect it to come maybe to this area here, another 6%, 7% drop. Nah, I don't know. I would want to see it grab the trend line, but also find a support off of a previous resistance. This might actually be the one. This is a good spot. Provided some support and resistance here, some major resistance here, even had a hard time getting up above it. Tested it here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. It retested that zone here. Maybe if I use this one here, this zone, retested it here. If it comes back down, it would be nice to see that get retested. And if it also coincides with the testing of that trend line, that's a very positive sign. But we need to see that like a good, strong test of it. This here is a jump above, there's no question, but we haven't retested it from the top. Bitcoin against gold, starting to get more expensive in gold. And that's just because we've seen gold really take a break over the last little while. Total market cap of all of the coins outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum been consolidating since that last push where we gained about 6% market capitalization. And I would say actually that came from the bottom there, 9%. This has really just been consolidating. Yeah, basically consolidating since this drop here from February. Ethereum against Bitcoin. This is another thing that we're doing as we are practicing looking at these charts, is learning to alternate between other currencies other than the fiat that we're accustomed to pegging it to. And Ethereum against Bitcoin has actually gotten better. So Ethereum is gaining on Bitcoin. Think of this as like the ratio. How many ounces, right? This is how many Bitcoin does it take to get Ethereum? And so if this goes down, then it means Ethereum prices are, wait a minute, what? No, if it's cheaper in Bitcoin, that's the same as, that's where I wanted to go with this. It's the same as using less gold to get silver. Because gold and Bitcoin, silver and Ethereum, that's the correlation. Moving on. Midnight, reaching some more new lows, got out of that little triangle pattern. We got to see it get up above this trend line before we really have any faith of a bullish pattern yet. ADA though really pushing the limits on this energy consolidation. Let's zoom out a little bit here, and I'm just going to take out this box because we don't need it anymore. This area here is going to be a crucial area. If we drop down below, that'll be a break of market structure, because that's where this is right now. This is C, and we will likely see a retest of A, which technically would be here. I would say, yeah, this would be the area around 15 cents, 15, 16 cents. We're going to be watching carefully over the next little while. That white line is the one we got to watch for. If we drop below that and retest it, it will likely be headed down for a while. We may dip below it, but then come right back up. And if we come back up into this zone, and we're likely safe to go up from some more. But again, that's a technical analysis. XRP, it's like everything's just like in limbo. BitTensor. This one, though, did create a new high, broke out of that daily trend. So we'll see whether or not it's able to get and test this long-term trend line. Again, for us to know that we're out of this, we need to see it get up out over top of this descending triangle or descending trend line. This really isn't a trend line anymore. This is a bottom line. Not much else to report. It's just waiting for things to happen on the crypto side of things. Most of the action that we're going to be waiting for is a conclusion to the oil crisis. That I think it's going to involve the renegotiation of energy contracts, because there's going to be a whole bunch of countries that are sick and tired, because there are already a whole bunch of countries that are sick and tired of the dominance of the American dollar, and they're not going to want to use it. So its status as a world reserve currency backed by oil is it's at great risk, and that we're going to see the emergence of other options globally. And that's kind of what we're waiting for. A resolution to the new and improved oil crisis. Yeah, this is going to be wild. I'm just looking at most of the money's made in accumulation, right? So this last purchase that they made, that'll end up making them more money than they started with. Oh. Okay, so here's NPC. We're gonna just quickly look at the meme coins here. NPC and SPX are really the only ones I follow, simply because they're the largest of the meme coins. We have broken out of a long-term trend line. I made this squiggly line here saying that when we break out, we'll likely see a retest, and we might be already coming back to see that retest occur this week. With SPX creating a new high for the first time. Oh my goodness, creating a new high for the first time since... When was the last time it made a new high? Back in October. Even using the previous highs, this pivot point here, using that as support. It's a steady climb up. We can see how that trend line provided some resistance, but then it got retested. Let's go to the 4-hour chart so we can see a little bit more detail. So we can see how that trend line got tested hard, and twice even, because it came up above, went back down, but did not stay down below. It went ahead and made a nice big movement. After that, the retracement hit the top side and has been creating new highs ever since on the 4-hour chart. With this new high here, that's a significant area. Very, very much outside of the range of this channel that I was marking before. Creating a new trend line. Yeah, not much else to report. Video game stuff has been climbing up here over the last little while. Storage solutions are still nice and low. Polygon, the main coin, is sitting at all-time lows. Fetch still actually holding its own, not at all-time lows like most other assets of the same class. Yeah. Questions, comments, observations, any other news? This was a good article. It was just talking about how the yeah, yeah. Bullion Star reported queues to buy physical gold and silver in its Singapore shops already on 20th of March. This was a long time ago, but this article was really good just to see the pinch that the supply chains are having for metals.
It's my thought that the whole thing with the manipulation of the metals will come to a screeching halt. Not sure when, and it just has that feel to it that, yeah, people will finally realize, yeah, the jig is up. I'm not buying paper contracts for something I can't hold.
Yep. But be mindful that the next form of metal is data centers. That's where the money's going, right? The gold and silver is getting eaten up, no question about it. But it's the data center companies that are buying it, not the governments. And the data centers, are the new banks. And
so do you think that they will be able to manipulate the prices just the same?
Of course. And I think my feeling about this whole thing is that they know they won't be able to manipulate them indefinitely, simply because we don't need to use the metal to make chips. We can use biological matter for growing out of the ground to make computer chips with nanotechnology. So I think that what we're seeing is simply a deliberate rug pull. Just make sure that when we get to the other side of this hump and that new technology is released on all the people, that they're as broke as possible, so that they can't so that they still require our currencies to live. That's just the pattern, right? So yeah, but it's kind of like in the Matrix, how the architect says, we've done this lots of times. If we reset this thing every once in a while just because it's good to do it, so it gets the whole system gets upgraded. And when we upgrade it, we recognize that there are some people that are going to resist, but we know how to handle that. We just make it where they can't get anywhere in life. They can't make friends. They have to live outside of the society, out in the cold, right?
Much like our conversation this morning about those ultra private phones and the consequences associated with them. That although it sounds fantastic to have this private phone, the practical application of it is difficult.
And that's why I don't advise people just like they want to get a de-Googled phone. Okay, great. But now, are you doing anything to secure the data still, right? Sure, it's on a private device and you're not signed up with Google, but are you still using the internet? VPNs don't do anything for you, by the way. That's like a big fraud. I don't know if it's fraud per se. They do something, but they're not being used in the fashion they're supposed to be used to accomplish their mission. People are sold VPNs and they go and subscribe, but they don't actually, they're not on their own data network. The purpose of a VPN is for you to access your internet at home behind a firewall. That's really the purpose of it. If you don't have that set up, you can be de-Googled if you want. You can have a VPN if you want, but the data still has to go through data centers that can see Who paid for that VPN?
Mm-hmm.
And VPNs, they cause more problems than I think they cause more problems than they're worth. If you're out and about and they just use your phone as a phone, don't use it as a computer, so that you have a lot more privacy. It's like, they want all the data so that they can send you relative ads that you'll be more likely to respond to with a purchase. That's the purpose of, that's why the system is set up the way that it is. But that if you don't use your data, if you don't create data out, and when you're out and about with your phone, they don't get the information that they need to send you the relevant ads. So like when I log into Facebook, I did it again there last week because I was looking at other places to rent, and it gave me an ad for cocaine.
What you talking about?
Yeah. Like,
did you find anything interesting to rent?
To rent I got a notification that I have to update, and I just about pushed update, which would have cut off my camera.
Huh.
Yeah, and I just about hit it. Yeah, so anyways, that's what's going on. I really ought to be paying more attention to the news, but I just get so fed up with the metaverse news. I really just glaze over what are people saying, because what we see in the markets is more so a response, an emotional response to what's said. And so I look at what's being said right now, because the trends, anything could happen. And that the macro trend is obviously toward digital. Everything's going digital. But we're looking for these markers. And that's kind of what I'm doing now, is I'm just watching to see what people are saying, because it's the markers that are most important. Like look at how now all of the main players through COVID that had to do with that made all their money off of the mandates and vaccines and all that stuff, they're all saying, oh, there's another pandemic coming. Oh, there's another pandemic coming. So we know that that's going to be an element of this next phase. But I think that it's going to translate in that they're going to be kind of like a catch, a bowl to catch all of the people who have nothing but slosh in their noggin. Then that's all they have left. And so those are the people that they're going to catch in that bowl, because most people recognize how much of a garbage campaign COVID was. But that the programming language was set, that the people are now associating with the whole tech side of things, right? So they know how big tech is. AI is the biggest hot topic. Now we've got companies that have gotten rid of their employees, regretting it, but got rid of a bunch of employees because they wanted to replace them with AI. And that mentality is going to continue, where AI becomes the thing that we're all dependent upon. And that if that's the case, all they have to do is pull the plug for a couple of days to make people go, bring it back.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that.
That's going to be a false flag cyber attack, a virus, but it's going to be a digital virus. So everybody gets on board to save the economy by signing up for the right AI that's going to beat out the enemy's AI. And I have a sneaky suspicion that we're going to see Anthropic take that role.
Well, you were saying something about Anthropic putting 40 billion into Gemini?
Other way around.
Oh.
Google is investing, because Google has Gemini. That's their model.
Oh, okay.
But they know that Gemini is inferior, and so they're investing in Anthropic.
Okay.
Amazon already had a major commitment to OpenAI, which was helpful for them to be able to pay for the loans that they have been borrowing from Nvidia and from Oracle to stay afloat. But that they just added another $15 billion installment for guess who? Anthropic. There's talk of Anthropic going on the public markets, which would then make it a stock. It's not a stock right now. You can't go like I can't go look up an Anthropic chart. Can look up a Microsoft chart. Oh yeah, and that's the other thing. The revenue share from OpenAI has now been cut off. Microsoft is no longer getting revenue share from OpenAI. But that didn't hurt Microsoft prices. Okay. Market analysis for Metal Monday on April 27th. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.